Welcome to this new interview about the new Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventist online. The Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventist, or the ESDA, features thousands of entries from around the world on a variety of topics, including articles on Adventist missionaries, evangelists, institutions, and beliefs. If you haven't checked the ESDA website yet, please do so at encyclopedia.adventist.org and browse more than 2,500 articles and over 5,000 photographs. I am Dragoslava Santrac, the managing editor of the encyclopedia and your host today. Our guest today is Dr. Alain Coralie, the Executive Secretary of the East Central Africa Division of the Seventh-day Adventist and the ESDA Consultant Editor for this division. Dr. Coralie, welcome, and thank you very much for agreeing to this interview.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you, and I'm sure that we will have some good time sharing together.
Yes, I believe so, by God's grace. Dr. Coralie, for the beginning of our interview, please tell us something about your role in the ESDA project and also about the ESDA team in East Central Africa Division. Who works on the ESDA project in your division?
Thank you so much. I am the consultant editor, but the person who's really driving this project for our division is Dr. Nathaniel Walemba, who was the former secretary, for our division, and who has a passion for history, and he's the one who has been pushing for this project to be a success in our division. So we have a wonderful team, and we have people also working in the unions, in the conferences, but he is the main person who's driving this project.
Thank you for telling us that indeed Dr. Walemba is doing an excellent work. As you said, he's passionate about history. And of course, he's not doing this project by himself. There is a whole team of union coordinators, as you mentioned them. And of course, the East Central Africa Division has been more supportive. And we have a whole team of authors who work in your division. Wonderful. We like to talk about Adventist history in your division, and I believe that many of our listeners don't know much about East Central Africa Division. So please tell us, who were the first missionaries to East Central Africa? When and how did the Adventist message reach your part of the world? Perhaps you could share some as the stories that touched you or perhaps surprised you. Our listeners like to hear stories from Adventist history, so feel free to share some of them.
Wonderful, and I like sharing stories. When we talk of East Central Africa Division, it's we need to remember it is a collection of many countries. And so to talk about how the message, Adventist message, got to East Central Africa would be very complex, and because you will have to look at from our different countries. Look at Tanzania, look at Congo, look at Kenya or Uganda or South Sudan, Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, and so Burundi, Rwanda, so many countries, South Sudan. So it will be very difficult to look at it broadly, but when it comes to East Africa, and especially when it comes to the work in Kenya, we think of the Canadian-born missionary Caskalen, who really was a pioneer concerning the work in Kenya. And what is interesting is that in those times, denominations had different regions to occupy. So one region was predominantly Catholic, another one was predominantly Anglican. And so when Caskalen came, it's as if the whole territory was already covered. But they said, but there is an area where there are not so many missionaries, so you can go there. So this is how he started working in the western part of Kenya, around the Lake Victoria region. And what is very interesting is that he was accompanied by his wife, but there was also another missionary with him who was not from Europe, not from America or South America, but he was an African and called Peter Nyambo, who was originally from Malawi. And so those two worked together, and this is how the message entered Kenya. It was very tough at the beginning, but especially through school, this is how people started getting interested with the Adventist message. But what is very interesting is that Kaskalen was the one who made a Luo translation of the Gospel of Matthew. Luo is one of the languages spoken in Kenya, and he was the one who did that, and it was published in 1913 by the British and Foreign Bible Society of London. So many things to tell about how the work started, but I think that many would say it was Kaskalen, helped by his friend Peter Nyambo, who really made an impact in Kenya, and as a result touched the whole of East and Central Africa.
We have published the entire article on Kaskalen, and our readers and listeners can read the whole story about this missionary and his translation of the gospel into Luo language, and the first beginnings of educational Adventist educational system in Kenya. It was truly through education that the message reached the local people, because people were interested in learning and education, providing education to their children. And that's where the Adventist Church truly found its place. And there are, yes, many other stories. As you mentioned, other countries, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, Congo. We have many articles on all these countries. And it's truly very encouraging to read about these early beginnings of the Adventist Church in East Africa, and to know that today the East Central Africa division is one of the fastest growing division of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the world. If I'm not mistaken, there are currently nearly 4.3 million Adventist members.
We just reached 4.5. We are growing so fast that GC is not keeping up with our numbers.
Well, and we are glad that we can keep up with the growing numbers, and we praise God for that. So nearly 4.5 million Adventist members. And to just think that in the early 1900s, there were just a few missionaries, a few Seventh-day Adventists. God has really blessed his people in East Central Africa with such a growth and development. And in the ESDA, we have many articles on hospitals and universities and schools. So God's work has been blessed in that part of the world. Dr. Coralie, are there any common factors that can be attributed to Adventist church growth across the countries and regions of East Central Africa? Are there some valuable lessons from our history for Adventist mission in this time that you could share with us, please?
Yes, thank you so much. I think one of the great avenues for the growth of the church in East Central Africa is through education. We have the largest school system in the Adventist church, and with so many schools, definitely we have a big we impact the community in a special way, especially in areas where maybe to have children go to school is a bit complicated, but where you have a Seventh-day Adventist church, which is there and that helps. And so it opened doors for evangelism, because people know us, because we are dealing with their children. And I think this is what has started the work in East Central Africa Division Education, and is still propelling the work even now. But I also think that things we can learn from the past is that to never despise small beginnings. The work was very hard then, and people might think that it is so easy now to have people join the church, but in some areas it is very, very tough. I'm taking, for instance, DR Congo, where for a city like Kinshasa, where you have 14 million inhabitants and have only 10,000 Adventists. And those are the challenges that we face. You go there and you don't know where to start. And but when you look back at how our early missionaries who sacrificed everything to come to Africa, you say you cannot now just say it is impossible, because for them, they made it possible. So we learn from history, and we are so thankful to God for having sent those missionaries, so that today they are an inspiration for all of us to go forward with the mission.
Yes, indeed. You put it so nicely that when we face challenges in mission, and perhaps even in our personal lives and personal spirituality, and perhaps when we feel like we hit the wall and there is not going further, we should be inspired by our past, because these people, they face the same and perhaps even greater challenges by being the pioneers. And I've been reading many articles from your divisions on Adventists and the Maasai culture, Adventists and the Luo culture, and just knowing how many of these cultural challenges Adventists face today, and language barriers and cultural barriers. Just the other day, I was reading about polygamy in some parts of Tanzania. And it can appear like very discouraging, very difficult. But as you nicely said, when we read about these pioneers and missionaries and local people, how they in faith face these challenges, and by God's grace they overcome. And today, 4.5 million Adventists in East Central Africa. That's a great encouragement that God is with us and we can move forward despite all these challenges.
Very true, very true. And you mentioned the Maasai culture. Mm-hmm. If you look at that article, you will see how difficult it was to reach the Maasais at the beginning because of their culture. And how do you adapt your message without compromising the faith to reach those people? And those are the challenges that we are still facing today. Just a few weeks ago, I was in Masai Mara conducting meetings there, and then you see someone who had 3 wives, 2 wives, and then he wants to become an Adventist. And how does that work? And we have on one hand the policy that we have inherited, and then you're confronted to the reality on the ground. The person is very sincere. He's giving tithe to a local church. He has helped build, and I'm talking about a concrete example. He has built a church for the Maasai community. So those are things that make you think on how to approach mission, how you can be faithful to our tenets and still minister to those people. And I think when you look at history, it helps us also not to repeat the same mistakes, because our history was not also only a glorious history. We missionaries made mistakes because we are all humans, and yet even learning from those mistakes can help us to move the mission forward.
Yes, indeed, indeed. And this is something that we also want to achieve with this new encyclopedia, and that's to be truthful in our portrayal of Adventist history. It's not only about the victories and glorious moments, it's also about learning from the mistakes we made in the past, and things that today we can do better by building on these foundations, and also learning from these mistakes. So thank you for highlighting that. Dr. Coralie, how do you think the ESDA can help pastors and administrators in their work of reaching out the people with the Adventist message? We already touched that question, but perhaps is there something more where the ESDA can help pastors, administrators, church planters, those who are in the field, sharing the Adventist message with the people?
I think it's very, very important to have ESDA, because it helps us to know, especially as administrators and pastors, that we are not here very often to reinvent the wheel. We are standing on the shoulders of those who have done things for the Lord. We are harvesting the work that they did in the past. So I think it helps us to be humble in one way. When we talk of the growth in East Central Africa Division, in the last 5 years, we have added 1.3 million members. But it's not the work of those 5 years. It's the work that started in the 1900s that has been creating that momentum for us to reach where we are now. And I think as administrators and pastors, when we read those stories, it keeps us humble, because we know that it's just by God's grace that we are doing that, and it's because of others who have worked hard and have not seen the fruits of their work. Many of them maybe have died thinking that their mission was a failure, and yet what they sowed is now, we are reaping now those benefits. I think this is very important. And also I think sometimes in our curriculum, when we train as pastors, we talk about Adventist history in general terms, especially Adventist history in North America, which is important for us because our church started there. And yet, we also need to know the history in our own country, in our own culture. And unless we get this right, we will not fully understand Adventism. It's not only history in America, it's also history in Europe, history in Africa, history in my village, history of my local church or local conference. Those things I think are important for all of us to keep us grounded also in the faith. And I'm not talking of theology here, but of knowing that we have roots that go very far. And when we don't know what to do, we can still go back and see how, look and learn from our pioneers. And I think this is why it is so important that we have the ESDA project.
Thank you so much for highlighting that point, because when you said how very often as Adventists we think of Adventist history in very general terms, and those general terms are usually Adventist history in North America, Ellen and James White and the very early pioneers, but Adventist history after so many years is much more than that. and to know the local history, to know the local pioneers and local people who built the church after those missionaries who came in the 1900s. That's where I think the ESDA has a special contribution, because when I read the biographies in East Central Africa Division block of articles, I see many local people from Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and other countries who have built the church in all these regions. And I can say that this can strengthen the local people to know that Adventism is not something just for North America or from North America. Adventism is now coming from Africa, from Europe, as you said, from all these other parts of the world. And all these regions can claim Adventist history as their own heritage today.
Very true.
Yes.
Very
Yes.
true.
Dr. Coralie, what about the church members? Would you recommend the ESDA even to them? Do you think that church members can find something interesting in the stories and information in the encyclopedia?
For sure. ESDA is not an encyclopedia for specialists, for only people who are deep into history, but I think it's open to all who would love to learn on how the church progressed throughout the years. And the good thing with ESDA being online is that whatever interest you have, just a click of a button and you are there, and you see the pictures and you read the history. And those articles are not, how can I say, they are not academic articles, and yet they are very informed articles, and very relevant and very practical. And I think this is how the church members can learn so much about the church. And if I'm talking of especially those in East Central Africa, many of our church members do not know our church history. Even what has happened in the US with Ellen James White and the rest, now talking about their own country, they would not know. And those who are being baptized right now, who are joining the church, what an incredible opportunity they have to learn our church history by simply going to the website and having that wealth of knowledge. And I hope this will be a motivator for them to be anchored, even to be even more, to be stronger in their commitment to the Adventist message.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Coralie. We often recommend the ESDA to church members to use it, for example, for prayer meetings or for missionary stories. I even use stories from the ESDA for children's story. I adapt them for children's story in my local church, and with the photographs, many children and their parents and church members love them. So really the encyclopedia has a great potential to help us build our identity and strengthen our identity and our faith today. Thank you, Dr. Coralie. As we end this interview, and I keep checking the clock, and the time really flies by, we need to end this interview. Is there any last thought that you would like to share with our viewers and readers of the encyclopedia online?
Maybe just to mention again the importance of knowing our history. If we don't know where we come from, we won't know where we are going. I like our name, Seventh-day Adventist. Seventh Day very often would point to history, what God did at creation, what God did through Jesus. But Adventist looks to the future also. So if we focus only on Adventist, the Adventist part, without looking at the seventh day, if we look at the consummation of history without looking at the beginning of history, I don't think that we will have a true identity, if I can express myself like this. We won't know who we are unless we know where we come from and where we are going. And I think the encyclopedia helps to ground us in that history. We are a people of history. We are a movement, like the book of Froome says, a movement of destiny. We have a past, but we also have a future. And this is what gives us our meaning today. So I think that if I had a message to all our listeners, it would be definitely let us learn our history. It will make us better Christians, better Adventists.
Amen. Dr. Coralie, thank you very much for sharing with us these stories and insights from the Adventist history and for this encouragement at the end.
It's been my pleasure, Dr. Dragoslava, and it's always a pleasure to work with you. You're an inspiring person, inspiring leader.
Praise God. Thank you. This was Dr. Alain Coralie, the ESDA consultant editor for the East Central Africa Division. Please read the articles from the East Central Africa Division and check the other over 2,500 articles at encyclopedia.adventist.org. I will repeat, encyclopedia.adventist.org. See you soon with another ESDA editor and new ESDA stories from the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventist Online. Thank you and God's blessings.